Okay, let's talk a little bit about this book, um, The Lying Life of Adults. I got carried away again looking into this author, and the fact is no one knows absolutely who she is. Still,
Huh.
there's speculation. I thought they had found out for sure,
Yeah.
but there is speculation, and a couple different people were pointed out as being the possible author. It seems to be this one journalist, investigative journalist, pinpointed through his examination of money from the publisher to this one person. He believes it's a person who does translations named Anita Raja, Raja, and she has a German mother, and she does German Italian translations. He believes that because of this financial records that he examined. Meanwhile, a bunch of scientists, and this is all on Wikipedia, in 2017 did a study of a bunch of novels, 150 novels written by 40 different authors, including Elena Ferrante, and they came to the conclusion that the book was written by Domenico Starnone, who happens to be the husband of Anita Raja.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So he's a novelist. She is a translator. So I think that's kind of interesting that no one has pinned it down. She still is maintaining her anonymity. And she does do interviews with newspapers and journals, but not live interviews at all. So my first question is, after reading this book, do you think that it's written from the perspective of a man or a woman? Do you think the author is maybe the husband or the wife, or maybe both, or someone else? It is a little bit of a harsh sort of book in a way. The writing is harsh in that it's extremely truthful. At least that's my opinion. So does anyone have any idea about that?
I've been for years a huge Elena Ferrante fan. I've read all 4 of her Neapolitan quartet. I've read all of those, just greedily, could hardly wait to get the next one. I've read some of her standalone books, but this one, I think the thing that got me was the protagonist was a young adult, and it seemed like it was kind of more of a young adult book, young adult issues and concerns. And gosh, at my age, it's a little far-fetched, but and as far as getting back to your question, Laura, I don't know. I don't know what the point of view, who the point of view person would be in this book at all. I can't figure that one out.
I agree with Jane that one of the things I wrote in my notes was I'm the wrong age, because I read it, I don't care about that. But now that you're mentioning that, the aunt seems to be kind of the center of things. Was her name Vittoria? And perhaps, I wouldn't say a man's point of view, but perhaps an older woman, a woman's could have been the author of it, to know how to balance, knowing that there's 2 sides to the family, and tension between them, and that anyway, I could see maybe a woman being the author.
So both of you, do you sort of not really like this book because of the fact it seems to be about teenagers, and that didn't appeal to you?
I couldn't find myself to like this girl at all. In
No.
fact, the more I read, the more I thought, you little selfish, little conceited, self-absorbed thing. Think about your parents, think about your aunt, and that strange relationship with that other family with the 3 children.
Yes.
I just couldn't go there. I couldn't go there at all.
What do you think about the Italian culture in this book? I kept thinking, wow, this is something that I can't quite understand because it sounds so Italian. Maybe I felt that because it was read by, what's her name, an actress on the audiobook.
Oh, okay.
with a very heavy Italian accent.
Ah.
What's her name? She's in all those movies. Oh, I should.
So now I read it, so I
I
didn't.
read it also, yeah.
Yeah, so that really influenced the way she was reading it, and the whole thing about dialect and all this sort of thing. And the different classes, it was so different from what I'm kind of used to. I mean, the fact neighborhoods make a difference, and the clothes. and the
Schools,
language.
clothing, shoes. There were so many class distinctions made, particularly among the youngest generation.
Yeah,
But that I think that we can relate to, because there are definitely class distinctions, especially with young people, as Adele said, you know, getting the popular shoes, the popular clothing.
Right jeans and so forth.
Yeah, right, yeah. And neighborhoods do make a difference, you know. Obviously her that Giovanna's father had made it better than her aunt, and so he was up in the hills, wasn't it? Up, or at least that's how I imagined it, up in a higher neighborhood, and then of course they would have to go down the hill to visit the aunt. I don't know. But that I think is understandable. I think that neighborhoods matter in the United States too.
Yeah, and I can relate to the disagreement between the siblings, the father and his sisters. I have that in my own family to a certain extent, sadly. So that all made some sense to me. But I kept thinking, this has no plot. Where is it going? And I couldn't find a plot.
well, it just seems like, I think that she starts at 12 years old, and then the end, she's 16.
Yep.
So it's really showing her development.
Such as it was, yeah.
So you didn't identify with any of that, except the difficulty between the Victoria.
That I can relate to. Sadly, that is in our family, maybe in most families.
Yeah,
To say that that would be a typical teenager's life and what they care about and what was important to them, that could be, but I mean, my kids are all grown up. I don't know that anymore, you know, it's a different world today than it was even when they were growing up, so hard to tell.
well, the other books were about young girls also.
But, you know, you got to really know those young girls. You know, there was the two main characters, which you follow through all through the 4 books. And you get to know them as people. And I think maybe that's why those characters were more appealing to me, even though, yes, indeed, they were young, very young in the first book, for sure. But, well, here, Arlen is here, and
Oh,
boy, I
wait,
can't wait
there-
to
there-
hear what
there-
she has to say.
There were only old links on the library page, and Linda and I couldn't find the page. So she's trying to find it still. I just told her it's now up. It wasn't up on the Facebook page.
I
So
had
it
to
was
call,
just an old link.
the library to get me in too.
Yeah,
do
I
you,
called. I called.
Where do you find the links normally?
You send us an email usually,
So
and
I need to send emails. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
and then if you don't, then I look on the library page and it's usually there, but it wasn't there today, and I looked everywhere, and it took since
Well,
I-
and
last
I
half
thought-
hour.
And I
so then-
discovered that calendar page, of
Calendar
course,
is like that.
and you use that, obviously the same link every time. So that really is, I
Yeah.
think the way to do it is to go to the calendar, find,
Yep.
yeah.
Yes, but we pressed.
No, I
It
didn't
was
know
an
that.
old link. It was just an old link on there. We couldn't get on until they just now.
Well,
put
no, I
the
think it's
link
the
on.
same link each time.
No,
So I
wouldn't- it
thought I
said that-
had them all updated. I'll double check on that, and I apologize if you had trouble
Yeah.
getting.
yeah, yeah.
Ruth is struggling too, I think.
Oh, gee, I thought for sure all of them were updated, but I'll have to double check, and I apologize for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry I missed the discussion. I'll have to go back and look on the
Well, that's all
the
right.
replay. Yeah.
How did you
I-
find it, Linda?
I think Arlen and I tried to sign in at the same time and we texted each other. I sent you an email and she finally found it and he texted
Just came
me.
up. Yeah, it just came up.
I think that's
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
I'll double check everything for the
Yeah.
future. So we just started and we're, as we have heard in the past, a lot of people didn't really like this book very much. Did any of you new people like it?
We were already talking about it this morning and how awful it is.
Oh,
And why do you say that? What
Oh,
made you
well,
say that?
Well, I thought, well, maybe I'm missing something here, and so I looked at all the, the NPR reviews and the LA Times reviews and everything, and
Yeah.
and they all said the same thing: ugly. that whole ugly theme, just that's what the book is about. It's just
Yeah.
I
it's
didn't
ugliness.
see very many redeeming qualities in any of the characters, really. They were all lying.
Yeah.
So it wasn't likable.
Yeah, but beautiful writing. I mean, she I guess I had forgotten, since it's been so long since I read My Billion Friend, that it's not this. The Ferrante is a pen name, and they're not sure who the real author is. There's several possibilities that it could be, because all along I kept thinking, who is this author? And then I went back and looked, and they don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, from my reading in Wikipedia, they think it might be this translator, the person who was examining the financial transactions.
Yes, but now they think it's somebody else too. I remember reading that a
Um,
long time ago, that they thought it might be the translator, but now there's some other person that they think it might be.
Well, the translator's name was Anita Raja, and then
Right.
they did a study, some scholars and computer scientists did a study of 150 novels in Italy of 40 different authors, and they determined it was written by Domenico,
Right, that's what
Arnone.
I saw today. Yeah.
who's the husband of the translator.
Oh.
So, so the plot thickens.
The plot thickens, is right.
So I was wondering I sort of see a male influence here.
That's what
It
I
is
see.
still
I did
harsh and
too.
ugly, you could say. Whereas
I
the mother's
agree.
reading those romance novels in the book, right?
It's exactly what I thought. I thought, this is a man writing this.
Or do you think it was a combination?
A joint effort, yeah, or a joint effort.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of those, you write a page and you send it on, and somebody else writes a page. You send it on and another person writes a page.
Yeah.
God.
Oh. Did anybody else like it? Did somebody like it?
I thought it was interesting, pretty complex. Like one reviewer, I like the point that he made about the father. The girl first sees her father as a sort of ideal man, a scholar, and all of this. And later on, she sees him it flips, and she sees him as a very petty person. So I like the structure, the arc of the story in that way. I will agree.
The writing, more about the writing.
Yeah, the writing. I will agree the characters were not likable. And another thing I thought was kind of interesting, this one article I have here, and I think it was the New York Times review, talks about how this book and the earlier novels, the quartet, were all about the same subjects. They had a lot of the same things: the dialect, the education as a means of social mobility, all sorts of details are very similar. But this one is written, takes place in the 1990s, starting in the 1990s, whereas the earlier one was at an earlier date. And
That's
that
right.
makes it, the earlier one is a different situation for women in that society. And theoretically, the 1990s, we've had feminism around, and still the woman is in the same place in both societies in a way, still.
The mother, you mean the mother?
Or the girl even,
Yeah.
So it says, the change in period makes all the difference. Setting Giovanna's coming of age in the early 1990s, Ferrante slyly asks how decades of feminism and reaction have changed the world since the Neapolitan novels Lila and Lenu were teenagers. So I do think that's kind of interesting how the world never really changes.
And what about the cultural difference? What did everybody think about the cultural differences, though?
You mean
What do you mean?
sides of the town?
Well, not only the time difference, which, like you said, the world never doesn't change, but did anybody was anybody else struck by cultural differences between the Italian uh, lifestyle, whatever, you know? Anybody? I mean,
This-
why isn't this an American novel? I guess I'm saying.
Well,
Why did? Yeah, go ahead,
it was
Adele.
the treatment of the dead, I can't remember the name of the man who had the two lovers, and they kept his ashes still in the house. And the picture of him, I think that is culturally Italian as opposed to American. That's for sure.
Yeah, oops. There's Ruth.
Oh, good. I sent her a text on I sent her a text on how to get in.
Thank you, thank you. I'll try really hard to make sure everything's up to date next time and get it in many places.
Hi,
Um,
Ruth.
Ruth,
Well,
hello.
Hi, Ruth. Thanks for joining.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi there.
I did the audiobook and it was read by, I remember now, Marissa Tomei. that
Okay.
actress. And so she read it with a heavy accent and a lot of expression, Italian expression. So it became very Italian to me. And I had, I think it's kind of good for this group because we're multicultural, but I couldn't really identify with that culture
Right.
too well, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. That's my question. Did anybody identify with the culture?
Well, but the food, when they went out, the food that they ate, that was typically Italian. When the girls would go out for a snack, that was, and also the education system, where the parents were in such close contact with the principal of the school. I don't think that would happen in this country.
Yeah. Depends if it's a small, like, private school or not, but yeah.
I think it may have been a special school. I'm not sure.
Wasn't there a special, schools were important also in the quartet?
Oh, very.
Yeah.
That was out of Naples.
Yeah, that was a pivotal point in the books, right?
Right.
Why do you think the author still wants to hide from the world? Do you think, when she tells this truth, do you think that's the real person and so she doesn't want to face the world? Or I kept thinking that sort of thing.
Or it keeps people mysterious, so people keep interest in it, keep
Good, so
wondering.
it sells books. It certainly does sell.
Well, keeps you in the news, yeah.
Yeah. I apparently here's a line from one article. When The Lying Life of Adults was published in Italy last year, people queued from midnight to get their hands on a copy, and reading vigils were held across the country. So she's become a sort of cult person over there. And I'm
Well,
sure
and even here, for the first time ever, there was a whole section of the Sunday New York Times devoted to this book, and it was not a synopsis or a summary, but it was kind of the actual language from the book, but not telling the whole story, but quite a thick section just on this book. It wasn't in the book review section or anything. And that is rare. I've never seen that before. So, I mean, they're making it was made a big deal of here too, not only in Italy. So, it's an important book, I guess, but I struggled liking it.
But by remaining anonymous, the author then misses out on all those things authors do, book signings and speeches and appearances. So you'd think that financially, whoever this is, doesn't need that sort of money or that kind of fame coming in.
I don't think she does. I don't think she needs any money at all.
I love this from the, I think this is the one from the LA Times. It says, it's like joyously plunging into a filthy city river on a hot day. You know the deceptively clear water is full of sewage and needles and condoms and that three-eyed fish from the symptoms and unspeakable other things. Yet for a second, it looks so cool. The soft lapping of waves is so tantalizing that you forget you're not at the beach. If you pause and think about it reasonably, the idea is revolting. But the plunge, might not the plunge be sublime?
That is a perfect quote.
Yeah. Amazing.
So I just love that review. A filthy river. Hi, yeah, a filthy city river on a hot day.
I kind of think, I kind of picture this author as being ashamed of herself in a
Oh,
way, and maybe that's why she hides out. I mean, there's so much in the culture of Italy, you might say, of you know, behavior and being condemned for certain things. I don't know if that would come into play. but that's
Well,
what
you
I'm
know, in the
thinking of.
Neapolitan quartet, I kind of always associated the author with the young girl that was educated and became a writer and all of that. And so I could see that maybe that would be close to home and maybe she was writing to some extent about her own life. That makes sense. But this one, I don't know where this one comes from.
Well, she sort of presents the girl as being intelligent and maybe this similar to that the other book, only a little more rawly honest, raw and honest about some of the things she went through. So I don't know. What do you think that bracelet symbolizes?
Yeah, that's right.
One-
Like, that's the big question I had.
What was that?
That was a main question. I couldn't figure out the symbolism, and there must be some of that very mobile bracelet, because at least 5 different women wore it during the course of the novel.
And
Oh, you
sometimes they
counted?
liked it. Sometimes it was respected and sometimes not.
Uh-huh.
So I couldn't figure out exactly what it meant either. Any ideas?
No, and I'm glad though that others couldn't figure that out either, because I thought, gosh, that's gotta be important, you know, and
No.
just,
Well,
so it
NP
makes me feel better knowing that other people struggle with that bracelet too.
Well, I
Ruth,
thi-
Ruth,
and
Ruth,
and-
what's your theory? I bet you figured that out.
NPR.
well,
Oh, did Ruth?
Rit- I remember that there was a surprise about the bracelet at the end as to
Yes,
the history
right.
of it, because the girl had, you know, for a long time, the symbolism really was that
Yeah.
it was her grandmother's bracelet.
Yeah.
And it was being demeaned by being handed off by her father, who who didn't really have a right to it at all,
Mhm.
to his mistress. But then it turned out not to be the grandmother's bracelet after all. So all of that symbolism that I'd been thinking about was gone.
So it
Well-
symbolizes lying.
Yeah, refresh my memory as to what she found out right at near the very end
Yeah,
about the origins.
yeah. NPR says, the NPR reviewer said, like femininity itself, it comes to be both ornament and manacle. So that makes sense. It's
Oh,
yeah,
manacle.
yeah, a manacle. And
Yeah.
but then they get confused too. They said, when she finally casts it off toward the end of the novel, we can't tell whether it represents a liberation or just the temporary delusion of freedom before the undertow of sex, of the things that come with sex, of the impositions and narratives of the other sex, claims her again.
Oh.
They
Well,
can't tell.
if
They couldn't
NPR
tell.
struggles with it, no wonder we did.
But that certainly
Well-
was the most fascinating thing in the story. I think that reoccurring theme, you know, where the bracelet gets passed around, and you keep thinking, you know, it means something.
Well, it tied the women together, but
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's
Well,
true.
yeah. But is it femininity or a manacle, an ornament or a manacle?
Yeah.
I like that description.
yeah. I do too. Just-
I
And-
really enjoyed their reviews.
Yeah.
What do you think about this Vittoria? I mean, on one hand, father, the father was supposedly educated and, gentle and kind and intelligent, but he goes and blacks out her face on photographs. I mean, that's a little bit extreme in my opinion, childish. And he does sort of flip from being this idle father to being a sort of very childish person later on.
Yeah. Yes.
So what do you think about Victoria herself? She really was different. I mean, sometimes you thought, well, it's good to be a strong character. Sometimes you thought she was too crude and rough. Kind of like the bracelet flipping around.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to live with her. I'm glad she's not in my family.
She had such control over those offspring of the other woman. I forget the name now.
The
Yeah,
Madeline,
Margarita. She seemed to be
Margarita.
just managing Margarita. And I tried to figure out how that happened. And it must have been something to do with Enzo, but
Yeah, that was very strange. I agree.
And it wasn't until the end that you realized, was it one of her kids complained about Victoria? Before you kind of thought they all fell in line and she was kind of holding them together, but I think they felt they were overrun by her.
finally, yeah,
Yes. Yes.
that relationship confused me right from the get-go. Well, as did several others, but
Oh, that didn't bother me at all. In fact, I thought that was pretty interesting. As you all know, I have an ex-husband and he felt very paternal toward the child that was born of my next marriage.
Oh,
It was really funny because he had not known how he would react. And then when she was born, it was like there was one more girl, one more daughter of his to think about to a certain extent. And so the business of Victoria having the relationship with Marguerite and Marguerite's children was not at all surprising, because after Enzo died, that was really all Victoria had left.
okay.
And Marguerite had a hard road to hoe without a husband, and this was of some help to her. It helped. They formed a little community
Mhm,
of their own, and I could see that.
Kind of extended.
I can't.
Well,
Yeah.
what about that Roberto? He's almost
Oh,
the nicest one in the book, right? At
the
least,
one of the convertible.
Well, the car, yeah.
no,
Yeah.
he was the young man who gave the talk at the church or whatever it was.
Oh, okay.
Studying
the
in-
philosopher of some sort at Milan.
Mhm.
He was not well developed enough for me to have an opinion about him. You don't see I don't think he was well developed enough to know what kind of person he was.
Yeah. I felt that he was the nicest character and you never get a chance to see his bad side the way you do with all the other. And so I kind of, here's my big question. Is Giovanna going to turn out like her mother? Is Roberto like the idealized version of the father before we find out the truth about him? So we only see half of Roberto.
Uh-huh.
Or do you think he's a nice guy underneath? No opinion.
No.
No. Well,
Both turn out like her mother. I think she'll revert back to the normal stereotypes of females in Naples.
uh-huh.
So she went through her sort of goth age where she was wearing all black.
Yep.
And then she started pulling out of it. And supposedly from the structure of the book, I think she started out as a kid and then evolved through the angst of adolescence and to start to emerge as an adult, maybe.
Yeah.
So
Do you think the author plans another book with these characters the way she did with her earlier ones? I mean, she left them at a precipitous place. You could easily follow on with another book.
That's what I do. There could be a follow-up, something carrying these women, these four young folks, or actually five if you conclude Roberto, into some young adulthood phase. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the continuing saga of those two sets of parents and Angela and Ida also. I could see this.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone heard that they're making this into a TV show, or Netflix is doing it?
Oh, good, is it?
No.
They are.
Are they?
No,
Oh, is that right?
Yep,
Netflix is doing everything.
yep, they're doing everything. And also that, is it Maggie Gyllenhaal? Well, how do you pronounce her name?
Something like that.
She really likes the books and has asked to, I think, direct or produce one of the other books, The Lost Child. So she's working on that. So it sounds like us, there's going to be some adaptation. So who knows if they do a Netflix version, who knows what'll come next, right? Well, I will say one thing, that I haven't seen all of you laugh as much at any of these discussions as I have today. So that's a good thing. Do you think it's because we're older women trying to judge this book? What do you think? Other group of people would say about it.
It would be interesting to have some young adults or older teens read it and get their point of view, wouldn't it? That would be fun.
Yeah.
Adele, remember one time, I'm going back way, maybe 10 so many years, we had a book group and some of the young adults, it wasn't through the library, it was through your church.
Yes.
And we had some young adults there, and it was a totally different perspective when they would tell what they found in a book. So in a way, that might be kind of fun sometimes to get some of the old people and the young people together.
And also, as I was reading it, I thought to get a male opinion of this, some elderly man as well, to see what he found in this novel or didn't find. I ran a little bit past my husband and he didn't find much at all, but
I didn't even bother. And
No, me either.
It would be interesting to see what men would think of Roberto, if they found him plausible or not.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, none of the male characters were well developed. Even Mariano, her father, I didn't get a real picture of him. Or it's the other one, I forget, her father was Andrea.
Andrea, yeah.
I didn't get a real well-developed idea of what they were all about. So that all led me to believe that perhaps the writer was female and she was not capable of fully expanding on male roles.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I can't remember from the first four, although I've read them all, how well developed the males were in those novels.
I don't even remember the males from those novels, so probably not.
Yeah, you're right.
All that speaks to me that it's a woman writer.
Yeah, I think you have a point, and harshly honest about her feelings.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And insecure. Which
And
is
that maybe
exciting.
explained her wish to remain so isolated and unknowable.
Mhm.
She may feel that if she has to appear in public and talk, she would not make a good presentation, not make a good, being interviewed, for example, she might do very poorly, maybe very shy or introverted.
Or maybe it's all close, it's too hard for her, too
Mhm.
personal, yeah.
She may
Yeah.
also be disabled in one way or another, or disfigured in one way or another, and figure that is not going to present properly. That just now occurred to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, or just because of that, it might be hard to handle public appearances, and she would rather not do that. I think it's a lot more likely that as a writer, she's drawing on her own life, and even though these characters are not necessarily exactly who they're presented to be. My husband's always telling me that when he writes, he changes things. You use a figure as the base, and then you change things to make them fit the story that you wish to tell. Even if she's doing that, a lot of these people might be very recognizable if it was known publicly who she is. And they're probably all still alive. Somebody our age still has brothers and sisters who are alive, and people that were in their close circle as they were growing up. And
And
if I
one-
were to write something, I would not want people knowing who I was.
And one reviewer actually said it might be dangerous for her, considering that she grew up in Naples.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
she may be protecting herself and family members and neighbors and so forth, because one form or another, they are in these, in these novels.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
NPR reviewer thought that one of the central lessons of the book was that gentility, manners, and even ideals have no power over sex, which is for Ferrante's characters an almost ungovernable force. This applies to middle-class intellectuals like the father as much as it does to someone like Vittoria, who works as a maid. As Giovanna grows up, she watches that force destroy her parents' marriage and the marriages of their friends, and it also begins to do its unsettling work in her own life. So this again, this is why I thought a man wrote it, because of that that lesson, that being one of the central lessons.
Oh, that's exactly the reason that it's a woman.
Well, see,
I'm with you, Ruth. I don't think she knows how to develop male characters. Or doesn't do. Maybe she chooses not to for one reason or another, but.
Well, I think the way she idolizes Roberto, it shows the force. She gets really obsessed with him, and yet she has no place in his life.
Right.
Yeah.
That sort of shows the force of that.
right.
And
But I just, that's why I thought that would be a man's central lesson, not a woman's.
Mhm.
A woman would never feel that way. I don't think, maybe they do, maybe modern women feel that way, but I just don't think women feel that way, that's a life lesson.
Feel what way?
That,
What do you mean?
that sex is the ungovernable force in a person's life and in these people's lives, that you can't combat it with gentility, manners, ideals. They have no power over sex. This is what the reviewer says is one of the central lessons of this book. So that's why, like I said, I was reading it and thought a man was writing it, and then I read this review after I read the book, and I just thought, this shows that it was a man. But I still think it might have been a collaboration. I think, like we talked about before, I don't know, it was before you got here, Ruth, that it could have been the husband of the translator and the translator writing this. Oh, that's one of the theories of the writer, of who this person really is.
Right. But I do think that women learn that sex has this very central role in life and determines all sorts of things.
Yes. Well, I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm just saying ungovernable. There's a very strong word, and this is what I felt through the whole book, that was the main force driving the life of these people. So I don't, maybe a woman did come up with this as a central lesson. I'm not saying she didn't. I just questioned it from the beginning that it was a woman.
Or a collaboration, which
Yeah.
I was beginning
Well,
to
I
might
think
be it.
yeah, it does make sense, I think.
Yeah. Power.
Huh.
That's the power.
It's just very unusual it seemed to be very unusual. And why would she, again, I'd like to see more of that, what Jane was talking about, the New York Times giving it so much attention. And I want to know what the fallout after that was. Did everyone like it then?
They
Yeah, I don't
published,
When they had those readings all over the country.
yeah, they published that in the late summer. I think it was August, maybe September, because I saved that section and I was
Yeah.
going to read it. But I have a thing about not reading abridged versions of stuff. And I was really afraid that if it was great, I would be missing out by not reading the book. And so I waited for the book to come out and I never read that. And I just threw that away, that insert from the New York Times within the last couple of weeks.
But
just
it was an
pitched it.
amazing thing, wasn't it, Ruth, for the New York Times should devote a whole section to this
Yes.
book. I was just
Yes.
blown away when I saw that.
Yeah,
Has anyone
they-
read Carl Uwe Nosgaard? Has anyone read his books?
No,
They're about his life, 6 volumes or something. He's another one. He's Norwegian, but there's apparently a cult following of his. There was a long article in something like the New York Times about the craziness of his following. Very similar, but it's a little different style. I think, maybe she really hits something about, she really gets into some sort of Italian culture thing that they identify with, the way he does with the Norwegians, so that it becomes obsessive for them. I don't know.
I read about a lot of the same books as my 34-year-old daughter, and I'm always expecting what I expect her to react differently to a lot of books. It turns out usually she doesn't. She reacts the same, and she likes the good books and she likes the bad books, and then any of that age difference stuff that comes in, she usually feels the same way I do, that it's not an age thing. So, but I would like her to read this one to see what she thinks.
But yet I think that, let's say the 20 and 30-year-olds today have been exposed to a whole new, different culture than we were.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I'm interested.
So,
Yeah.
because I think that revolves, I mean, think about the
Yep.
movies and TV and music, that revolves around sex
Yep.
and
Yep.
sex power.
Yep.
So, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
No.
But
Anyway.
rarely do we disagree when she reads a book and I read a book. We might like it to a varying different degree, and we discuss the reasons why we liked or disliked it, but rarely do we go on opposite sides and say, like the New York Times might say, well, this is a wonderful book, and I would say, oh, this is an awful book. We've never done that. We've always agreed. We tend to mostly disagree on maybe style of writing, or whether this is really a good writer. We might disagree on that, but not on the value of the book usually. Or
well, Arlen, you raised her. So you have
What?
you have similar values. You've transmitted your values.
Yeah, she's my daughter. Yes, I agree with that. But so it is a balance one way. But I still value her as because she is a different generation, to let me know whether I've completely missed the boat on some of these books. And she reads a much more varied type of book than I do. There's a lot of like pop books, I call them pop novels, that she reads, and lots of memoirs, and it's by younger artists, younger writers. So I'm always interested to hear what she has to say about these things, and she's a writer too. I mean, she's one of those writing the great American novel. So I'd like to find out other. That's why I thought maybe I'll look for that New York Times thing and see if there was what the comments were on that.
Well, I think it's interesting that this Elena Ferrante started writing way back in 1992.
Yes.
She was published in this country around 2006. But one thing that caught my attention was that in the BBC review of the book, it said that her Italian publisher was sure there was a wider audience for her writing when her book came out in English and wasn't very popular, and tried to find a US publisher for the book. When no one was interested, they set up their own publishing house, Europa Editions. So that's interesting to me that that publishing house was the result of her. Did anyone know that? Are you familiar with that one? They do a lot of translations. So
Was it on the bestseller list then after that, that New York Times? Jane, do you know? Was it on the bestseller
I
list?
don't know. No,
Oh.
I don't know.
Well, it was, the New York Times thing was published before the book. So it couldn't have been, I mean, the book couldn't have been on the bestseller list yet. They released that. It was really unusual for the author to allow that.
mhm.
Yeah, it was
And it-
published in 2019, so this must have been a year and a half ago, Ruth.
Oh, I've kept it that long?
Oh, no, I
Yes.
don't, I think that was this summer.
It's called
I
hoarding.
thought it was this summer.
No, I think it was published in Italy in 2019 and here later, maybe 2000.
Yeah, I think it was this summer, and then the book came out also in late summer.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was just looking at the front of mine. It does say Europa Press or whatever it's called.
Mhm.
It was published in Italy, yes, by this Edisonio. That's the apparently the Italian company.
Does it give a date for the Europa Press print that you have?
And
Yes,
what-
2020, published by arrangement with Europa Editions, it's called. So 2020, yes.
2020, yeah, it was
A
this
year
summer.
later.
well, I think My Brilliant Friend was on the bestseller list. So, and I missed the beginning of our discussion because I didn't get here till late, and I was wondering, did you say anything about that book, about My Brilliant Friend, as to whether you read that, you liked that, or how you reacted to that?
I love those.
I think Adele and I both read the whole quartet, right?
Yes.
And I don't know about the others of you, but no, I thought those
I
were
think I read
fine
3 of
books.
them. Yeah. By the way, there's a documentary out there that I could not find, but it's called
Ooh.
Ferrante Fever.
What is it? Bronte what?
Fever.
Fever? Okay.
And it has people like Jonathan Franz in it, and he gives quotes and that sort of thing. So
Okay.
Oh, that would
That'd
be interesting,
it
yeah.
would be very, yeah.
so that would, I couldn't find it anywhere,
Mm,
but it's out there.
okay. I'll look.
You couldn't find it on YouTube?
No, I
thought
tried.
everything was on YouTube.
Everything,
Yeah, I
everything's
tried.
on YouTube. Yep.
It will probably be there at some point,
Yeah.
but. Well, okay, it's coming up to an hour. I hope that everyone will enjoy the next month's book and can get a hold of it. You mentioned before the title is Hamnet.
Yeah.
And it has excellent reviews, so it's still unfortunately got a lot of holes on it. And I did watch a movie not too long ago, actually the second time around, called All Is Well. Has anyone heard of that? It's a British film. It's a play that's based on it's based on the death of Hamnet and the relationship between Shakespeare and his wife. But it takes a lot of liberties with the subject, and I would highly recommend it. It stars Kenneth Branagh, Judi Dench, and Ian McKellen.
And
Ooh,
is it
Title?
available on
It's in
Netflix?
the library catalog. The title of the DVD is All Is True.
All is true.
All is
Yeah.
true.
Okay.
I thought it was a clever play and a similar subject to this next book, so I'd recommend.
Laura?
Yes.
I
Yes?
just wanted to find out if anybody else has watched the PBS series on Hemingway that just started. I don't know if it's all over the country, but I've
Yeah.
just saw it last night. This
Yes,
first
I
Yeah.
did start it last night.
Yep.
What did
Yeah.
Not yet. Not yet.
I mean,
I
we
plan
did,
on it.
we did a couple of books about
Yeah.
his wives, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
at
did you
least the
think?
first two.
Couple of his
Yeah.
wives anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I love the Paris part that was in last night's segment. And anything like that, it's easy enough to find on pbs.com.
Yeah.
So you could sit on your couch and watch that first segment if you wanted to, preferably before 7 o'clock tonight.
Is that when the second one comes on? Yeah.
Yes, it's 7 to 9 Central Time and Wisconsin PBS.
8 to
I-
10 Eastern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have ordered the DVD for the library, so eventually that will be here.
Oh, good.
I think it's, as usual, Ken Burns does a brilliant job
Yeah.
examining his subjects. So it's really interesting, even though I'm not a great fan of Hemingway.
I'm not either. I'm glad to hear you say that. I'm not either. I don't think he was a very nice guy at
No.
all. Very troubled, lots of problems.
But nice has nothing to do with it.
Well, I guess I like a little nice.
Is this author nice? The one that we just read?
I keep
Well-
wondering if anyone knows a real Vittoria type of person in the world.
Oh,
Is there another character in a book similar to her? She was pretty wild.
Oh,
I'd love to see how that's going to be portrayed when they do the video or the film
Movie.
portion. I'm wondering what actress can play Victoria.
Yeah, that would be something. I'm reading today. I'm reading a really interesting book, a silly book.
Upstairs.
Jane Eyre, Modern Times. It takes place in a suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. There's Jane and there is Eddie Rochester, and there is the wife
Wife
upstairs.
upstairs.
You know, and it's a
Oh.
light book, but it's fun because you know, you could. It is like Jane Eyre, but it's a fast read. It's every once in a while when I read so many heavy books, I need to read something fun, and
Yeah.
The Wife Upstairs is a fun one.
Well, thank you.
I was always such a Jane Eyre fan.
Well, okay, thank you. Anyone else have a recommendation before we wrap it up?
Has everyone read Hamnet already or not?
Can't
No.
touch
No, I haven't
No.
been able to get it.
I know Linda read it because I sent it to her for my friend.
yeah, I have read it.
Yes.
What do you think, Ruth? Is it?
Love it. Love
Oh,
it.
I loved it.
Yeah, I
You-
loved
I
it.
absolutely
Oh, good.
loved
I'm
it.
glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And I had the Sturgeon Bay Library copy, but
Mhm.
it was when it was first out and people didn't know about it yet. So
It's
I got it almost
word of mouth.
immediately.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I got it for Christmas and I passed it on since, Linda and a whole bunch of my other friends. Yeah. Wonderful.
So that's good to hear that we have something.
I'm on the list. I
Beautiful
hope to
ride.
get it for the next month.
Me too, me too. Does it
Okay.
look like we'll continue with Zoom for a while yet?
I think through the summer, for
Okay.
sure, and maybe later.
Oh,
And right now, I'm looking at the catalog for the regular book. There's only 20 holds and there's quite a few copies. So it should go pretty quickly because it being new, it would be only 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay.
Put it on hold. Should be able to get it by next month.
I have to say that I've really enjoyed the Zoom over the
Yeah.
winter when normally I wouldn't be able to meet with you in person.
Well,
So that's been
yeah,
handy.
Jeannie and I too, and Linda and
Yeah.
Arlen, all
Yeah.
of us.
All of us.
We-
Adele, yeah.
Something to
Adele.
look forward to.
And we're hoping to do some sort of hybrid thing once the library does have programs here again, because
Good.
we are getting a lot of people involved with things this way.
Yes,
So-
I can see that. My problem will be when I get back to Wisconsin, my internet's not anywhere near as good
Oh.
because I have satellite. I don't have any cable.
Oh,
I have satellite, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
yeah, and mine will be lousy too.
Library parking lot.
Oh, all gone.
Yeah.
So anytime, Jean.
Okay, I'll come down to Adele's house.
Nice of you, Joe.
Ruth is usually sitting in her car.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, I think I'll just come down the road to you.
Yeah.
Come to my house.
There
You
we
can
Yeah.
come to my,
That's what I
Ruth.
thought.
Ruth will meet on our deck. You could come.
go.
Okay.